Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hardcore Human Design. I am Miko, and on the other side of the world, as always, most of the time, thankfully, we have Celestina.
Hey yo, what's up, guys?
And today we are going to be talking about shadow work. So, shadow work is something that is coming up all over the place. At least for me, I see it everywhere. Everyone is talking about it. Shadow work books are coming out more and more. On Instagram, it's flooded. And the two subjects that for me come up more and more are shadow work and the feminine and masculine energy, working on these aspects. So in human design, you can also do that, and you can really dig deep into your own design in a different way than a human design reader would probably read your chart in the first place. So when you're first getting a reading, the human design reader usually focuses on the potential that is within you and not on your shadows, because this can really be seen like a therapy session. You can go so deep into yourself with human design. And what we want to point out right from the get-go is that whatever we are sharing here, it is important that you always listen to yourself, to your inner self, see what resonates with you, see what you want to work on first, because it may not be the same for everyone. However, there usually is a certain structure that you can get started with. And so we decided to break up this episode into several different parts. We don't know how many that's going to be yet, but to make it very, relatable to everyone. And today we're going to start with explaining the shadows of types, and we're probably also going to mention the potential of the types just to show you both sides. But first of all, would you like to introduce shadow work? What is that?
I like to call it the unsexy part of human design. Have you ever gone on a hike where you have no self-service, maybe you're by yourself or you're with a really small group of people and your mind just starts going and you maybe bring up things that are uncomfortable? That is shadow work. That's a different kind of shadow work, but human design illuminates your shadows or brings out your potential in different ways as well. So yeah, it's the unsexy work of human design. I feel like looking at your chart for the first time, you're like, oh my God, yes, this is me. And then you learn where you've been conditioned. And by that, I mean externally, right? So where society or where people in your life have made you and shaped you into a certain way, and maybe that isn't how you inherently are. Understanding that is the first step, and then acting on it is the second step.
I like the way that you explained it with being on a hike and having all of those thoughts flooding your mind. Probably things of, am I going fast enough? Or is someone looking at my bum when I'm hiking in front of them? Or I don't know what what goes through your mind when you're on a hike. That could be shadow related, but it's usually judgmental thoughts. And to me, I like to combine it with vulnerability. So Brene Brown is someone that is famous in this field of talking about vulnerability. She's fantastic. If you haven't read any of her books, I would highly recommend it. And to combine shadow work with vulnerability is super powerful, because when you're connecting with your shadows, you are giving the possibility for them to come to light. And if you're just continuously suppressing your shadows and keeping them in the dark, they are going to wreak havoc in yourself, because you're not letting them out, or you're not even willing to look them in their face. So they are just constantly inside of you, hiding and coming out in the most unhelpful moments, when you're having arguments or when you're having discussions with others, or when you're entering into a room and you try to prove yourself because you're not self-confident enough because you haven't confronted these shadows. And it may seem strange to combine these aspects, but I think facing your fears and your shadows, first recognizing them, you need to first really sit with yourself and recognize, okay, this is a shadow that I have. And there are many, many different ways. We're not saying that human design is the only way, but it is a really amazing way to do that. Because a lot of times when you're doing shadow work, you have to sit with yourself, sit with your thoughts, dig deep, and it takes a while to uncover that onion, because your shadows are kind of like an onion that are just very compact, and you're trying to unwrap that onion, and you keep going and you keep going, and so only certain shadows are going to come to light at certain times, which is also great. And human design can just give you a way to be like, okay, how about you look at this today? How about you look at that? But when we're saying that as well, it is again important to follow your strategy or to follow your inner authority, because it may not be the right time. You may not resonate with working on that shadow at this moment. So that's, I think, when you're able to look at your human design chart, recognize your shadows, feel into which one it is you really want to work on right now, which one is coming up over and over again in your life at the moment, what do you feel needs work right now, what is life providing you as an opportunity to work on the shadows right now, and then to work on them and to release them. It's going to give you so much more power to not hide all your shadow aspects.
I think the hardest part is probably knowing what comes up as a shadow for you. And I've found that the best way that it's been explained to me, at least, is those like nagging thoughts that persist or something that feels uncomfortable in your mind that you're scared to vocalize, right? Those can be shadows. Things that have come up from your past that maybe you just haven't processed through can also be shadows, right? Like there's a bunch of different things that can come up as shadows, and it's not just like, oh, that one really big thing that happened to me, right? Like there can be a lot of small things surrounding that big thing that have shaped you in a way that you didn't recognize. So that's also really important, I think, as you're doing this, right? Like it wasn't just that one incident that happened when you were 13, right? It's maybe what were the events that got you into that? What led up to that? Or maybe it's that shaped you, and then that, I don't know, maybe that caused two or three things down the line to shape you and change you, right? So I think it's really important to think about that. Think about things as catalysts, and also think about things as like repercussions of that can be different spaces to look in, different shadows to look at, different corners and alcoves to look into, if you will, while you're doing shadow work on yourself, for yourself, and while you're really digging deep.
Yeah, I love that point that you made, that it's sometimes smaller things. And when you're starting to work on these smaller things, more things are going to unravel. And it's not going to be always these huge, very challenging events in your life. But sometimes you need to work on the smaller pieces before you can even get to that event to release it. And a client of mine also made a very good point where she was mentioning that when you're working with shadows, it is important to not just focus on the shadows, but also focus on the joy in life, because joy is actually a really good way to release your shadows. Happiness, laughter, and you need love. In my opinion, love and joy are very closely linked. And you need love to bring light to your shadows. So laughing and not taking it too seriously, not taking yourself too seriously when you're going through the shadows. And she was telling me that every time she would recognize one of her shadows, she would laugh about herself and be like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is only showing itself now, and this or that I'm only seeing it now. It was there, but Yeah.
That's a really good point. I think releasing it is something we can talk about after this, but there's definitely a couple of methods that even you've shown me that work so well to release, to cut ties, whether it's in your mind, in your body, or physically. So we can maybe touch on that at the end of the episode as well, because I feel like there are a handful of techniques that are really, really good for that too. Once you've identified them, worked through them, you can release them.
Yeah, so stay tuned for the next, I don't know how many episodes. And then at the end, we're going to share some methods of how to release them. No, it's because it's also, I feel like these releasing techniques, they are quite complex in some ways, and some are very simple. But yeah, it probably deserves a whole episode on its own.
We're going to be talking about this for a few weeks, but that's okay because I think this is a really important topic to not just deep dive in one episode because it can be really overwhelming. So, if you guys want to follow along the journey, just hang on tight for the next couple of weeks and we're just going to be going deep into the shadows. Oh my God, how apropos before Halloween. This is like very fall weather vibes. I'm digging it.
That's true. That's true. Yes, who knows how long we're going to be on this? Maybe we'll even go until the 12 nights of transformation. There's like this time period between the years of between Christmas and New Year, even beyond New Year. It's the 12 nights, and they're called Rauhnächte in German. And in that time, you basically let go of everything that's in the past and in the past year, and you set yourself up for what's to come in the upcoming year.
I'm excited for this. We actually have a plan for the first time this year. Let's go.
Totally planned.
All right, let's go into the shadows. Do you want to start us off with some projector shadows?
Oh, the projector shadows. So,
You're like, I'm one of those. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, the projectors. So, a projector is. There are approximately 20% of the population. So, they are individuals who don't have the sacral defined. And they are usually known to be here to guide generators. So, people with the sacral defined, generators and manifesting generators. And whether or not you believe that to be true or not, that's a whole different thing. But for projectors, they have different themes of the theme of being in their not self is called bitterness. And when they are actually following their path, the life path, or they're going into the right direction, they're going to feel seen, and they're going to feel, I lost track, successful. There we go. Yeah, projectors are going to feel successful. I kept having the word satisfied, but no, that's generator. So yeah, projectors are here to feel successful when they're going into the right direction, and they're also here to make others feel successful. So when you're talking about these themes of going into the right direction or living more in the not self aspect, this is not just going to impact you as a person, but it's going to infiltrate your aura, and it's also going to have this impact on others. So when a projector is bitter all the time and they're not successful, they exude that aura, they exude this energy, and other people are going to feel that from them. And there's just this vicious circle that creates, because when you as a projector don't take care of yourself, you are going to feel more and more bitter when you keep swallowing whatever it is that you need to do or you want to say and you're not saying it. Then you're just going to become more and more bitter, and you're not going to receive the invitations that you need as a projector. A projector needs to wait for invitation. And you're not going to invite anyone to do anything when they are bitter. You don't want to work with such a person. So that's why a projector really needs to focus on self-care I mean, everyone does, but for a projector, it's super, super important to nurture and care for yourself, to fill up your own cup first. Otherwise, you won't be able to guide others, and you won't ever get the invitation to guide others. And if you're going to try to do so, you're going to feel bitter. If you're trying to do so without the invitation, you're going to feel bitter. Because if you are a projector, you probably know that very well. When you're trying to give advice to someone, unsolicited advice, it's really eating on you. And it doesn't feel good. And it's not a happy place to be. Would you like to add anything else to this?
I personally am not a projector, but do you have an example of an aha moment that you've had about your not self, being in your not self as a projector that really sticks out to you?
To me, one of the moments that was probably most impactful was when I'm looking at my parents. I always want to help them, and I want them to be healthy, of course, and happy. And you need to recognize every one of us has their own backpack. And we have a tendency for the people that we love to want to take their backpack and carry it with them. But that is not going to help them. And what you really need to do, and this is what I've been doing with Opportunity and my clients from the get-go, I never want them to be dependent on me. I always want them to have the control in their own hands, and I want to teach them how to fish. I don't want to fish for them. And that's what a lot of other coaches may be doing, or other individuals in the work field, also marketing and things like this. And this is also the argument that I received from my father. Yeah, but you have to make them come back for more, and you have to kind of create a dependency. And I'm like, no, this is, at some point they have all the tools that they need for this moment, and then they can come back, and they can always ask for guidance and more advice. But it's more about the doing and moving forward and really implementing these tools at some point. You can't always provide information without implementation. And the moment that for me felt, I realized that I need to step back, because I was starting to feel bitter when my advice was not taken by my father, for example. And it's nothing that is bad, but I just saw his health and I wanted to help him. And so I gave advice, I created a plan, and it wasn't implemented because I wasn't asked for help. I wasn't asked for support. And one of the most important things for me as a projector was really to learn first to wait for invitation. And this has changed my life. This is a huge game changer. Every time now I wait for invitation, whether it is to move somewhere, whether it is to work with someone, I can ask questions. I can be like, hey, would you like some help with that? But then the invitation has to be spoken out. And yeah, this was the game changer.
Yeah, I feel like the real life examples hit hard. So I appreciate you sharing that, because it's more than just reading it in a book, and it's more than just like reading it in someone's blog. You know, that resonates.
Thank you.
What next? You choose one. Popcorn it.
Manifestor.
Okay. I feel like that was too easy. All right, cool. So from our resident manifestor, hey guys, hi. So manifestors are out here to inform, initiate. Think of the Nike slogan, just do it, and that is what a manifestor should embrace. Not gonna lie to you, 90% of the time, that's scary. It's super scary to just do it, right? Not knowing what's gonna be on the other end. That is why it is super important to inform as you're doing it. And the informing isn't asking for permission. It's just letting people around you know that it's happening so that they can brace for it, right? Or they can join in if they want to, and if it's something that they like resonate with. So that, I think, is the biggest piece of it for a manifester. However, if you don't inform, if you aren't taking this initiative and you're making yourself small, that I think is what I see a lot more so with manifestors than anything, right? Rather than going out there and forming and doing the things, is kind of shrinking back in, not using their voice, and becoming small, because societally there's only room for how many leaders, right? There's only room for how many innovators. But as Miko said, there's 20% of the population is projectors. Only about 9 to 11-ish% of the population is manifestors, right? So really, we are a small percentage of the population. So your voice does matter. And I think that that's really important to remember when you are exploring, one, your design, and two, the not self theme of anger. So if you are in your not self, if you're not informing, if you are not embracing the Kickstarter that you are, right? Like you're here to bring new ideas into life. If you're not embracing that, anger can occur. Um, I was raised by two manifesting generators, so I feel like for me, it comes more out as like frustration and anxiety, but anger can occur when you are pushed to your limits. Um, yeah, so as Mika was saying with like projectors, right? There's a waiting process. And I think manifestors forget this too, right? You can't just like do all of the things all of the time. You don't have that generator energy. So you kind of do have to wait a little bit for a download. Not everything is going to be your thing, but something that you feel that pull towards. For me, it's a heart pull. For someone else with a different authority, it'll feel different, right? Maybe you wait out your emotional wave. Maybe it's the splenic, oh yeah, like right now in the moment. Um, Whatever that is for you as a manifestor, learn to tune into that strategy and authority piece and inform. Inform as you're doing it, and you'll piss less people off, which will mitigate the anger that you'll feel on the back end. And I can tell you that by using your voice rather than minimizing it, it's going to be an absolute game changer. So in my life, I vividly remember a time I was playing volleyball with some friends, like at the park. These are like my childhood friends. And I remember being really loud. Like childhood me was very like loud, New York, Italian, obnoxious, right? And like shout it from the rooftops, whatever. But I vividly remember in this moment being like, wow, am I too loud? Like, is my voice too much? And not that I quelled it after that, but I moved to a different state, didn't have that same group of friends, and I think I was a bit more quiet and reserved because of that. So this is what I was talking about before, right? Maybe it's not a huge moment in your life, but maybe it's just like that one little thought that can change your trajectory in a certain way. Eventually, I found a different friend group and I was loud and obnoxious again. But like the point being is sometimes it's just those little like thoughts that have happened in your life that can become shadows that may have affected you in different ways throughout your life. So looking at some of those small little pieces, I think can be really important. And truthfully, I feel like I was living in my shadows until like my early 30s, and like I'm in my early 30s, right? So like within the last 2 years, have I truly embraced what being a manifester with my design type is like. I don't care what people think or what people say anymore, right? Like I'm in a point in my life where relatively monetarily stable, and if I lose my job, their loss. That's kind of my mindset at this point. So it's I know that not everyone has that luxury, and I know that that's coming from a place of um, what's the word I'm looking for? Great privilege, which I get not everyone has, but having that support, I know that I can say and do what I need to do to get a task done. And damn, it has been empowering and freeing. So, just to give you guys a bit of perspective of like following the strategy and authority piece, working through the schmutz that you're feeling, working through that like negative, those nagging pieces. On the other side, really embracing who you are feels really good. Not to say that I don't get angry, because I do. People still piss me off and do stupid things. But it's not always in response to not informing, right? It's usually a multitude of other reasons. But yeah, so long story short, inform to mitigate anger. And if you are feeling anger or frustration or kind of that, oh, I should have done this differently feeling inside, that is a space to look at in your self discovery journey for sure. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean it's always interesting to hear from a different type and their experiences, and I find the example that you gave as well, it makes sense. I think it was probably several different things that happened in your childhood where you were also not allowed to be as loud, or not, it's not necessarily loud, but just voice yourself properly. And this may have also been something that your parents or your grandparents told you to do or not to do. It's interesting how when you're really sitting with the subject of where was I allowed to speak my thoughts, speak what I really wanted to do, manifestors are often, especially as children, they're stopped from doing certain things. They want to climb that tree, they want to climb that wall, and they're all usually very safe in doing so. What you need to teach them, though, is to really inform and to let the parents know, hey, okay, I'm gonna go there. And it's, again, not about asking permission, it's about informing and telling them, okay, I'm going there. Of course, there may be some trees that are too high to climb, or some walls that are too dangerous, but I think it's important to provide a certain sense of self confidence, or just to give them the space to really play and do whatever they feel like they want to do. And what we didn't touch on, I think, was the theme that comes out when you are following the right path, which is feeling at peace. And do you have an example of where you felt that voicing or informing and then following through with an idea made you feel at peace?
Yeah, so this typically happens. Okay, so yes, with one of my first like in-person events that I hosted with the Dietitian Collaborative, telling the world about that and then having people sign up for it, that was, I knew that that was the right track. But not that my heart fell out of it, but when it became, I feel like there's a fine line between informing and then having to social media over inform and like tell people about it a million times. That is the point where it feels horrible, right? So the initial piece always feels really good until it's, is anyone even listening at this point? So yeah, but I would say with like 90% of the things that I put out there, like that are work related or entrepreneur, like my business related, all felt really good until they sounded like a broken record because of social media.
All the things where you felt you could make an impact, I assume. That's a very big thing for manifestors. For everyone that doesn't know, they want to have an impact on the world, on the people around them.
Yeah, that's definitely it. And it's something that my heart was pulling me towards, right? Like it's a multitude of different things.
Yeah.
It's so like looking at your strategy, or rather looking at your type, but then like also looking at your authority. Like what was I feeling that heart pull towards? That's usually when I felt at peace. It's been a hot second because my job is stressful right now, but it's all good.
Well, then we're going to move to the generators, because that is going to lead us to the manifesting generator. And we're not forgetting about the reflectors, don't worry. But the manifesting generator is just a mix of both manifestor and generator. And so that's why I feel like this structure makes sense, because then you can just combine the two things and be like, okay, yeah, this is that makes sense. That's what I got to do. So as a generator, you have an enveloping aura. So it is very cozy, comfortable if you are living in if you're living out your true potential. If you are not doing that, it is not as cozy. And it is actually very challenging to be around a generator that is in their not self because they exude an aura of frustration. So that happens when generators are doing things that don't satisfy them. So satisfaction is the way to go for generators, and frustration is what they will feel when they are living in their not self. I would say, as an example, this would be doing a job that you really don't like and continuously having to go there. And generators are known to have this life force energy. They have the sacral defined. They do have a lot of life force energy, which kind of runs from morning till evening. But it only works when you're following your satisfaction. If you're going to a job every day that you hate, you're not going to feel that. You're not going to have that energy. You're actually probably going to feel exhausted. And I just talked to a client of mine, and she's a generator. And she was saying that a generator is actually being conditioned to also be a worker bee. So yes, 70% of the population approximately has the sacral defined. So manifesting generator or generator. And they can work from morning till evening, but it's not going to be as easy and as comfortable if you're doing something that you hate. And that's just pure logic, okay? You can say that to everyone. However, if a projector would be doing that, their energy, and a manifestor, their energy usually is running. I mean, we can work longer, but it's healthier for us to run for 4 to 5 hours and really do work related things for 4 to 5 hours. There are some slight differences as well in this, but in general, that is the recommended amount. And if I look at my day, this is also how I work a lot of times. I do a lot of studying, I do a lot of self-care, I do a lot of work, but usually the amount of work that I do is actually around 5 hours. And in between, I always have a few breaks. I mean, I have a dog, I go walk my dog, and there are many intervals, or I take a very long time in the morning to do my self-care routine. And I know that this is what I need to do to fill up my cup. As a generator, she was saying that you're programmed to work, because they are often quoted as being a worker bee. And I personally don't like to put that label onto generators, but they can seem like worker bees because they have that fuel, that energy that can keep them going. So yeah, as a generator, I would highly recommend that you figure out a way to follow what makes you feel satisfied. And when you're feeling frustrated, it's usually a sign for you that you're not going into the right direction. We're going to come to the manifesting generator, where it can plateau. So basically the frustration, you can feel it for some time, and then you feel satisfied again and it goes up, and then you feel frustrated again while still doing the same thing. So this frustration aspect can be something that shows up here and there, but you need to learn to decipher, okay, this is a frustration that is going to stay. And if I keep going that way, it's not going to benefit me. But it can also be a frustration of, okay, I need to suffer through this for a little bit, but I know there's a silver lining at the end of that, and it's going to bring me to the next level. So these are a few things to bear in mind, even for generators, but especially for manifesting generators, that this can be the case. You need to learn to decipher which frustration is going to bring you to the next level and which one is going to keep you stuck.
Quick note on this. So my husband is a 6'2" sacral generator, and he has been complaining of lack of job satisfaction for over a year now. Unfortunately, he has a job that he doesn't love right now, and being in the military, you can't say no. Anyway, he has not been this sick consistently in the entire decade that I've known him. right? So I think that this is really important to note for generators, right? You can go, go, go. However, he naps every day after work since we've moved here. That did not happen with past jobs. He's always been a napper, but like that did not happen with past jobs because there was a tremendous amount of job satisfaction, even though his work days were longer. His work days are shorter here, and there is far less job satisfaction and a lot more exhaustion. And that has also led to like the physical manifestation of being sick more often. So I feel like that's important to note for the generators out there. Again, whether you're an MG or a generator, the satisfaction piece in what you're doing day to day is so important because that will recharge your battery. You do have unlimited energy if you're doing what you love. But if it feels like you're hitting a wall every day, you're literally gonna, not literally, but you're metaphorically going to hit that wall every day and need to nappy poo every day. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, true. That's a great point. You have a generator example that, oh my God, that's a perfect example. But yeah, this is what she was also talking about, my client. She was saying, we've been conditioned to just work, 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 and even you can end up with a burnout, even if you have a sacral defined. It's just, you need to, again, we keep saying that, but it's important to enter into relationships correctly, whether that is a work relationship, a business, like a business partner relationship, if it's a personal love relationship, whatever relationship it is, you need to enter into it correctly. And when I say relationship, for me, work is also a relationship. So that's also a very big part. And if you're not listening to, yes, of course, he doesn't have much of a choice in the military, which is a big challenge. But if you do have the choice, then really follow your strategy. For a generator, it is wait for your sacral to respond to an opportunity and then see what your inner authority is and follow your inner authority. So the manifesting generators are basically a little mix of those two. Would you like to take over?
Sure. Yeah, so manifesting generators are quite literally a combo of manifestors and generators. So they're here to both inform and respond kind of concurrently, kind of simultaneously, respond to things that they have an or about, or that emotional wave for, or whatever their active center is telling them the yes or the no's, and then inform as they're taking action upon it. MGs are here to do things a little bit faster than generators are, just because of that little manifestor sprinkle, if you will. But the not self piece can manifest itself as both frustration and anger, right? So the goal for a manifesting generator is to have both peace, satisfaction, and kind of wrapped up in a nice little bubble so that they can still do the things that they love. But yeah, if you've listened to the manifestor piece, if you've listened to the generator piece, that was kind of just summing it up in a nice little nutshell for you. And last but not least, reflectors. So reflectors make up about 1% of the population. But since I know a reflector pretty intimately now, I feel like I'm excited to talk about this. The 1% of the population is in my life, and I love it. Yeah, so this very rare energy is here to mirror back and reflect back everything that they're experiencing in life and then also learn from that, right? We're going to talk about centers and being conditioned in a different episode, but imagine just having all of this energy bombarding you all of the time and having to learn from that. How wild is this energy? Anyway, they can also mirror back to you, the other person on their receiving end, what is kind of good. Actually, have a reflector in your life to understand your not self. Go find that 1%er out there because they really are here to reflect back to you, like the sexy parts, like the parts that are like, okay, cool, in alignment, and then the unsexy parts, the areas where you have to do some inner work and some digging. Anyway, reflectors are here to wait. So similarly, but also very different, And then projectors, they're here to wait a whole ass lunar cycle. So anywhere between like 28 and 30 days. It's just a whole lunar cycle. It's not a whole ass lunar cycle. I see you laughing, Miko. Yeah, so reflectors are here to wait a whole lunar cycle and make decisions based off of that. They are here to feel surprised. And I really do love surprising a reflector. It is quite an enjoyment when you can, one, listen to them, because I think that that's really important. And then also, you'll have a better understanding of the environment that you're in, as well as the environment that they're in, when you do listen to their insights. But one, reflectors need to be in a very they need to be in a healthy environment, right? Because they are a mirror of the environment that they're in. And if it's unhealthy, if it's not for them, that will be reflected in what they're putting out. Not that they're going to inherently change it, but it can be funky. Yeah. So the next piece is disappointment. And I think, again, depending on who you're around, right? Like I'm a manifestor who was raised by two manifesting generators, and frustration is how I manifest my anger. I've seen a reflector manifest their disappointment as anger. So I think it is very much who you're around, like the conditioning piece. But disappointment is, I mean, it sucks, right? But it's also a product of the environment that this person is in. So that those are some of the major pieces of it. But if you are a reflector and you are experiencing disappointment, really look at the environment that you're around. Is it the people? Is it the physical environment? Are there toxicities from the people? Are there just like toxicities from the environment, like mold, environmental things, right? Really look into that, and you can have a fantastically prosperous life if you make that one small change. Actually, I do know another reflector. How do I know two reflectors? Anyway, I do know a reflector. She's a dietitian. She was in a medical setting. I don't recall if it was hospital or not, but she was in a medical setting with very toxic people. Hated it. Was sick 90% of the time, and like actually like physically ill 90% of the time, and then decided to work for herself, makes her own hours, has a very flexible schedule, and does a couple of different things like podcasts, does contract work for other people, does like cooking demos, does a variety of different things. And that's what keeps her like super stoked, super satisfied in all that she's doing. So there definitely is a happy medium. And I don't think there is one specific job or style of job for a reflector, but the environment piece is key to pin down.
Absolutely, yes. So that's the biggest conditioning factor or point where you should look at when you're working on your shadows as a reflector is where am I right now, who is surrounding me, the place you work at, the place you live in, where whatever your environment may look like. And also when you're making decisions, it's very helpful to sleep in your own aura and to have your own space to be able to feel into these lunar changes, because reflectors have their own specific lunar calendars, basically. So when you're combining the lunar cycles and where the moon is, where the moon is passing through, and which connections that creates in you. So those are the moments where you have centers that are being defined. Those are the moments that you can really ask yourself certain questions. And when you're starting to go through that, your own personal lunar cycle and your own personal lunar chart every month, you're starting to understand what it feels like and when the time is right to make certain decisions, what it feels like to be certain about certain decisions. Yeah, the good thing is that reflectors have a very solid aura, just like manifestors. They also have a very solid aura, and manifestors, it's called repellent aura, which I also don't really like that word, but it makes sense, as in it protects them from the outside world. It pushes people away so that they can kind of like a train. They can make way for things. And a reflector has a different kind of aura, but it's protective. It's sampling, but it's still in this sampling, it is protective for the reflector. So they're sampling the information from others, but they're relatively protected within themselves when it comes to the aura of other individuals. Yes, still the environment makes a very big difference for the reflector. So yeah, that is all I got for the end of the reflector, and that's maybe all we've got, unless you have anything else to add to this.
I was just gonna say it feels like his name's Pigpen from the Charlie Brown movies. You familiar? No. I'll pop it
I
on the
just know
screen
his
really
blanket.
quick. Pigpen. He's like the stinky one. And he has
Ah,
like
but doesn't he have a blanket with him? No, that's another one.
that's another guy. That's Linus.
That's
This
Linus.
is
Okay, I
Pigpen.
haven't
He's the
watched.
stinky one. This is what I
Oh
imagine
my
my
god.
aura to look like.
Oh my god. Now I know where you're going with that. It's not. You don't stink.
Okay, that's good.
Once you let people in, it's all cozy.
All right, guys. Well, on that note, see you next week, where we're still going to be talking about uncovering your shadows, but a slightly deeper level.
Yeah.
To be
Thank you for
determined, not to be
listening.
determined. Words. Continue.
Thank you for listening, everyone. And until next time, bye.
Ciao.